and I'm the coordinator for American Corner Kazakhstan, and I'm the host of the meeting. So thank you everyone for joining us. And today's workshop is about essay writing, and I'm happy to introduce you Abigail Homer. She's a Fulbright ETA. And so before we start, I would like to ask everyone to turn off your microphones right now, but you can use them during the session. And also you can use the chat box to ask us some questions if you have some. So don't be shy. So we'll try to answer all of your questions. And okay, so now I give the floor to Abigail.
Great. So hello everyone, it's nice to meet you. My name is Abigail, or Abby, and this year I was teaching English in Aktau. But before that, I also worked with Education USA. So one of the things that I like the best is to help people with their writing. And today we're going to be talking about writing, which is great, and especially application essays. So it's going to be fall soon, and there are a lot of different exchange programs and opportunities that are often open in fall especially. So I know a lot of people might have to write these application essays soon. And with that in mind, I'm going to open it up to you. I'd like for anybody to mention if you're thinking about applying to a university or an exchange program that will require you to write an application essay. So who is applying to any program that requires an essay? Okay, so right now it seems maybe no one, or people are shy. Either way is okay. But we'll talk about these application essays because they're a little bit different than essays that you write in your university programs, or essays that you write as like an argument essay, a persuasive essay that you might have for IELTS or TOEFL. So just so you're aware and you can have some ideas if you need to write one of these application essays. So let's get started. I will share my presentation. Let's see. Where is it? Here we go. Okay. And when we have discussions, feel free to either write in the chat box, or you can turn on your microphone, whichever one is more comfortable for you. So can everyone see my screen? I have a presentation open.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. So before we get started about application essays, I wanted to ask you about your writing process. So what do you do when you first sit down to start writing an essay?
Brainstorm.
Absolutely, brainstorm.
Then create the first draft and the second.
Generate ideas.
Yeah, so first you brainstorm and then you write the first draft and second draft of your essay. Does anybody else have a different writing process?
Hello. When I'm writing, I'm thinking in Russian, and after that, translate in English.
Okay,
After
so
that, writing.
you first think about your ideas in Russian and then translate them? Yeah,
Yes.
great. And does anybody else have a writing process they would like to share? Is there anybody? Oh, go ahead.
Before writing my first draft, I usually write down all my thoughts.
Mm-hmm. So is there anyone who doesn't do any preparation? They just sit down and start to write it and write the whole thing from beginning to end. Is there anyone who does that?
I most of the times do that. I usually brainstorm in my head and without writing everything. And after that, I try to write the first draft and I work on that.
Yeah, I always used to do that. And I still do sometimes, especially with creative essays. So I'll share just some common writing, different kinds of pre-writing and brainstorming for the writing process, because I know that different people have their own process and sometimes it's unique to you and you should stick with what works best for you. But I'll share some of the common ones that a lot of teachers recommend. So the first thing that someone mentioned was brainstorming. So brainstorming can look a little bit differently. Sometimes people brainstorm by talking, discussing their ideas. Sometimes you do it in your head. Sometimes drawing or writing your ideas helps for brainstorming, or writing on a whiteboard sometimes helps. But brainstorming, just trying to gather all of your ideas that is relevant to the essay prompt. So whatever you think of when you hear this question, you somehow put it on paper, put it on a whiteboard, get it in your head. And then after you brainstorm, you can identify key points. So you created all of these disorganized ideas and now you put them into what is the most important is your key points. And then organize the ideas, what order should they come in, and really trying to identify what is your big argument, what is your big point. Because no matter what kind of essay it is, you should have a main point, something that you're trying to express. Okay, and so some people, including me sometimes, they just sit down and start at the beginning and write until it's over, and that's how they write their essay. But there are also pre-writing activities. So I showed the first one here is bubbling or mapping. So this is usually drawing. So you can draw your main idea, your supporting points, and then even besides this very simple one that I'm showing on the screen, you can have a much more complicated one that has more sub-points and shows how ideas connect. So this is a really helpful pre-writing activity for people who are visual learners because it helps you to organize your ideas and put them in the order you want. And then you're ready to just write everything out in complete sentences. And then there's free writing. Does anyone know what free writing is?
Free writing.
Free writing.
Free writing is writing whatever comes to your mind.
Yeah, so this one
Which is related, of course, which is related to the topic, to the theme of the essay.
Yeah, so this is a really popular pre-writing activity for creative writing. I personally don't like it but it works for a lot of people. When you're in the brainstorming process, you just write, you maybe set a timer, 10 minutes, and just write whatever comes into your mind while you're thinking about your topic or about your story, whatever you're writing. And then, has anyone heard of looping with free writing? So I think no. So looping is where you take one idea from your free writing. So you already did a free writing for maybe 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, and then you take the idea that is most interesting to you. So you just find what is the most interesting sentence, and then you write that at the top of your paper, and then you free write again, thinking just about that point. So it's a way to bring out more and more details, more and more ideas that are specific. And then journalistic questions. This especially helps to bring out ideas and details because you ask yourself questions like who, what, when, where, whatever you're trying to describe. Kind of pretend you're interviewing yourself to get all of your ideas onto paper. Okay, so those are just some pre-writing strategies, and if we have time, hopefully we'll use whichever one of those you like the best at the end of the session. So that's why I introduced them, because to share your ideas, you don't always have to write a whole essay. You can start just with pre-writing, and it helps to share your main idea. So now we're going to move to application essays. So I have here what I think is the purpose of a college application essay. Has anyone written these before?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I did too.
Great. So they're not just for college, there are college application essays, but they can be useful or in the same style for exchange programs, for scholarships, for even some jobs might have these, not as often, and different opportunities you might find in your career. So the main point to me is that a college application essay gives you a chance to stand out. So when people are on a selection committee for a university or for a scholarship, they might read hundreds of applications. And when they read things like resumes, the details don't always stick in their minds, but an essay that has a good story can help them remember you. So it's a way to make yourself seem unique. It's a way to introduce yourself and say what's different or what's even special about you and why you would be a great fit for their program. So the application essay can be one of the most important parts just because it's your biggest chance to help them remember you. Okay, and so these are some essay prompts from the Common app. So these are very popular essays for applying to university, but the same themes are always there for scholarships and exchange programs and those other things we talked about. So I'll read just two of them. So the first one says, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful they believe their application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. And the next one, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? So when you read these kind of questions, what type of essay do you think they want you to write? So there are
About
different...
you learned, like life challenges, I guess, what you learned from them.
Yeah. And so there are different types of essays like narrative style, persuasive style, descriptive style. What do you think fits best here?
Narrative, because they want to hear a story.
Exactly. So all of these prompts, like you said, they want to hear an event in your life, or they want to hear a story from your life. So because of this, they can be very different from the essays you write in your courses. So I'm the type of person who loves to write an analytical essay in my courses, but these type of essays were always very challenging for me because they really should be more narrative, they should be a story, they're a creative essay, not just having a good argument and writing your points analytically and grammatically correct. It's a lot more about finding a good story. So what I hope that you can take home today is to kind of think about the stories that are important in your life so that you can use these in your essays, because the hardest part for me is getting started. So having an example of a couple stories from your life that you're ready to pull out can help you with these essay prompts. And it can also even help in things like job interviews, to be able to discuss what sort of events in your life helped to form you as a person, as a student, as a worker in your career, as a professional. And what should be included. So as you saw in those prompts, a lot of them had multiple questions. So when we have these kind of essays, it's really important to read the entire prompt carefully so that you can answer all questions or points. You should consider each prompt and choose the one that will be best for you. So when you think about the stories that are most impactful in your life, you can choose between, and I'll go back to the prompts for a second, something that's an obstacle, like in the second prompt, or in the third prompt, where it says reflect on a time when you questioned. In that one, it can be something about changing your beliefs or changing your ideas about something. Or the first one is about a talent or interest you have. So you have to think about which one fits you best, because it won't be the same for everybody. And then you can develop from there. And as we discussed, it's good to include at least one detailed personal story. So I say detailed because, as we will discuss, you really have to use storytelling techniques when you write these essays. So that includes details. And then our next point here, use the principle of show and not tell. So this is a storytelling technique. Does anybody know what this principle is? Show and not tell. What does it mean?
It is about describing all senses, what you see, what you feel, the smell, the taste, to make the person not just see the picture, but to be on your shoes, like, and to feel everything that you felt at that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the most important storytelling techniques, is to use your senses when you describe what's happening. So you don't just say the events, you describe from the 5 senses what you see, hear, taste, smell, touch, anything like that, or your emotions, how you're feeling. But I think the biggest thing about show, not tell, is that in these kind of essays, you might want to say something like, I am a responsible person, or I am a hardworking person, something like this that would be a good trait in a student. But you can say this in your essay without ever using the words responsible or hardworking. Instead of saying, I am responsible, you tell a story and you choose one that shows how you're responsible. So you can, if that's what you want to say about you, if that's your best trait or the trait that you want to show the selection committee, you don't need to use the word. You choose a story that will fit your purpose. So your purpose is to show you're responsible. So you tell a story about a moment or an event or something like this where you showed responsibility. And then last, make sure the information in your essay is new. It's something the selection committee will not read in other parts of your application. So this is a mistake that a lot of students will make, is that in their application, they include a lot of information in their resume or their test scores or awards they've won. You don't need to repeat that information in your essay. Remember that this is an opportunity to give them more information and say more about you, not say the same things. So if you already said the same story in a short answer question or in a different essay, then you should use a new example from your life. Or you shouldn't talk about your test scores, you shouldn't talk about things like that that they will see in other points in your application. And what should not be included? So like I said, repeated information should not be included. So transcripts, test scores, lists of accomplishments. You should really try to focus on one story and make it creative instead of using these lists of information. And formal or business language is not recommended for this type of essay. It could depend on the program you're going into. Of course, if you're applying for an MBA, maybe business language is okay. But these are called personal essays, so they want to hear your voice. So if you are a 17-year-old applying for college, then they expect you to sound like someone applying for college for the first time. They don't expect a professor. So you can make your voice according to who you are and not try to make it as fancy as possible. And don't go off topic. So this is the hardest one for me. You have to remember that the topic is you, your background, or your future goals. So I like to choose the prompt that is about my interest because I like to write about things I'm interested in. But I have to remember this essay isn't about my interest in foreign languages. It's about me. So I don't just have to write about the language I like and start describing the language and what I like about it. I have to talk about myself. So you have to remember that even if it's uncomfortable for you, you are the topic. So those are very important things to remember. And then, so this is more what I want you to focus on today, is choosing a story. So having these stories in the back of your head before you write an application essay, or just as you go through the years, so that you're ready when you have to write one, or again, even in job interviews, having these stories ready can be helpful. You have to choose one that will be good for application essays, good for these job interviews. So these are some brainstorming questions that just help with the writing process for choosing a story. So transformative experiences in general make the best stories for application essays. so that they can understand why you are the person that you are now. So you can ask yourself when you brainstorm, what has changed you as a person? What is an experience that taught you a life lesson? What has changed the way you see the world? What has changed the way you live your life? And what experience shows your values, your inspiration, your motives? So these are really just brainstorming questions. So I think I will, let's see. So let's talk about beginning hooks for a little bit. So do you know what is a beginning hook? How do you write the beginning of an essay? Okay, so a hook is like a fishing hook. So it's how you grab the reader's attention and keep it. So people say that when someone's reading a personal essay, you have to get their attention in the first 2 sentences, or they will lose focus and they won't pay as much attention to the rest of the essay. So you really have to get their attention from the beginning. So the beginning is the most important part. So there are different ways to start a hook. A hook can be anything actually, because it's just something to grab the reader's attention. And a skilled author, a skilled writer can use many techniques. But for people who are just starting out, these are really good, solid ways to start a hook that anyone can use. So there is stating an interesting fact, describing a moment in great detail. So this was one we talked about earlier. You use your 5 senses to put the person in a time and place, so they can imagine the setting, they can imagine being in your shoes. And then there's ask a question. So of course, usually you ask a question that you will answer in your essay. So something to make them interested in what you have to say so that they will want to know the answer. And using a dialogue or conversation. So this is another way of putting someone in your shoes, but doing it through a conversation that they want to understand the context of, rather than describing the moment in great detail. So storytelling principles are the most important part of writing your hook. Like we said, painting the scene with your 5 senses. So you have to think, where is it happening, when? If it's a story from your childhood, making sure to make that understood right away can be really important. So think about where it is, when it is, and what is the character, or in a personal essay, probably you. What were you seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, or tasting? And how are you responding? So your action or emotion in that moment. And we compare scene versus summary to talk about whether it's a story or whether it's more like a journalistic story instead of a narrative story. So a scene is what we want to write. Scene is an event where you take the person as if it's in real time. So you're describing something from the moment it starts and taking them through that scene using the 5 senses. But a summary is more of a highlight. So it tells just about the important information. So for example, you can say, when I was in 10th grade, I competed in the Olympiad for science, for chemistry maybe, and I won. So that would be a summary because it said what happened, But a scene, of course, would be painting the scene as preparation for that Olympiad, or being nervous before it started, or the most important moment when you won, something like this. So you focus in on the moment and give all those details and take them through it. And of course, make sure to tie it to the theme or focus of your essay. So the hook should be related to what you want to say. And I'll skip this one. Okay. So I want to put up this brainstorming question and give you all a few minutes to think about what story from your life you could use for an application essay, and then use pre-writing techniques to just summarize it. So you can either do a bubbling technique or free writing to think about what story you would use. So, and you can do it in your head too, but think about a story you would use, and then we can share them after, let's see, what time is it? Let's say 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, we'll share them. Whoop. Sorry. Here are the questions.
Abigail,
Yes.
unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time, but before I leave the conference, can I ask one question?
Absolutely.
If some people gonna write something like, I'm smart, I'm hardworking, would you trust them? Because most of people write like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I mistrust them, but it's a lot more convincing if you show that you're smart instead of just saying I am smart. So if you're choosing a story that shows how you're smart, it might be related to problem solving, it might be related to your academic interests, or a moment that shows your intelligence, but also using these storytelling techniques will give the impression that you're smart. So using these storytelling techniques and choosing a story that will highlight that. It's better than just saying, I am smart.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And if anyone else has questions, you are welcome.
And a last question. Can I use casual English, like I wanna do something, or I'm gonna, or I must write I am going, for example? How should I write, like professor or like usual citizen?
So I do think you should write like a usual citizen. So in other words, you don't have to look up in a dictionary the most advanced words, the most complicated or big words that you can use. You don't need to do that. But I do recommend that you use correct grammar. So instead of wanna, saying want to is considered better for writing, because wanna is just, it's kind of just how it sounds when we talk, but when you write, you can use proper grammar still. So it doesn't have to be completely formal, but good grammar is still good to use.
Okay, thank you. I have to go. Goodbye.
Okay, yeah, thanks for coming and have a good evening.
I'm going to apply for a master's degree, and I would like to ask if we are going to work only with Common App essays today.
Common App was the example I used, but the same topics usually apply to most things you will apply to, most programs. With master's degree, I can give you a little bit more specific advice about that. So when you're applying for a master's degree, you can still use these stories, but you should tie it more to the degree that you want. So if you are applying for a master's degree, usually you have a certain research focus, or if it's a professional degree like business or law, you already have some work experience. So you should be writing specifically about your interest in a certain research field, your interest in a certain area of law or business. So you should still write creatively, because if you only write like list of facts or something like this, then it won't be interesting. You still have to write something unique, something personal, something to make them remember you, but make sure that you include your research focus. For undergraduate, that's optional because they expect you to still be finding yourself. You won't know your goals necessarily. But for master's degree, you should be writing about your academic goals too, or professional goals.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, Abby,
Yes.
can you kind of point out to common mistakes people make when writing applications for, when applying, let's say, for a program, master's degree program, for instance?
Yeah, of course. And I also see a question in the chat about the appropriate size of an effective essay. So the writing prompt should tell you the size of the essay. These are usually one-page essays, but you want to make sure that you read the instructions, because sometimes they will be 2 pages, sometimes they will be maybe 250 words, which is more like half a page. So you have to just make sure. And for Asiat's question about the most common mistakes. So the most common mistake would be writing the wrong style of essay. So not writing a narrative essay, writing an essay that is not focused on your goals or your motivations. So then you just wrote the wrong type of essay. This is a really common mistake. Another mistake is that if you can have somebody read over your essay, it can be really helpful. So as many people as you can get to proofread can help you make sure that they understand what your goals are from your essay. They understand what your story means. But usually it's just in reading the directions. So making sure you read the directions, you know the length of the essay, you know the questions you're supposed to answer. Those will help you the most. And I see in the chat about font size. So this is, again, something that will depend on the directions. So sometimes you're using an online form and you can't even change the font. You just copy and paste into their font size. But read the directions and see if a font size is mentioned. If it's not, then for the US, it's usually 12-point font in Times New Roman is the most common. But they should tell you all this information about font size or space between the lines, or how many pages or how many words it should be. You have to really pay attention to the directions. And this can also help with writing your story, because you want to have your story be an appropriate length.
Abby, are you here? Okay, guys, sorry. Probably something is wrong with Abby's connection, so we will wait for a little bit, okay?
The mentality with the essay writing, and this makes a big difference. I think even the fact that we have to write these narrative essays is part of national mentality. These started more from Western educational institutions, and they can be really challenging for everyone, of course, but especially for people who aren't used to writing these kind of essays in their own institutions. So to overcome that, I think that the biggest thing is to read a lot of example essays and see how people tend to express themselves, but also to not be afraid to write about your background in your essay, because this can be really powerful. And it can also make the selection committee expect that your point of view and the type of story you're going to tell, or the way that you tell it, might be different from someone in their country. Okay, and were there any other questions? I don't see the chat history. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left, a little bit more than 10 minutes. So did anybody think of a story that they're ready to share, either in the chat or with your microphone, something that might work for this kind of essay?
Actually, I can share.
Great.
Yeah. Exactly, Roland. I'm from Pavlodar. I have applied for different scholarships and programs several times, and some of them have been successful, some of them have not. What I think now that this application process helped me to understand one very important thing. If you set up a goal, and this goal is significant and meaningful and important for your career and for your life, then if you start, never stop it. Just do it till the, I mean, with, and not only with application, I think with anything. You just, if you set up your mind, if you make this decision, you start and just go on and finalize it. So never procrastinate, never stop, because you know, with two successful with two, even three, yeah, my 3 applications, I have, you know, sometimes had the idea of, oh, maybe I stop, maybe I don't do this, because you know, it's time consuming, it takes so many you know, so much time, so much energy from me, but I made myself continue. And actually, I was a success. So, and this experience made me understand that you should be very persistent if you have a goal. So go on and never stop.
Yeah,
And can be like a justification of an argument that you, like you, in an application process, in an application essay, you mentioned that you are persistent, and then you can just tell the story as a, you know, justification for this.
Yeah, absolutely. So that can be a really powerful essay to write, but it's also just really good advice. So I participated in the Fulbright program, but the first time I applied, when I was still just graduating college, I did not get Fulbright. I was an alternate and I was not selected, but these opportunities are often very competitive, and not getting it once doesn't mean that you can't get it again or you can't get it someday. You can keep trying and keep bringing perspectives from your application process. So the challenges that you had the first time applying or second time can even help you write your essay the third time, because you learn from participating in the process. Absolutely. So thank you for that advice. And I see Daria has your hand raised.
Thank you.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I could say that probably after becoming an exchange student and a finalist, I looked at my life differently. Like, I had a different background and it was a big cultural experience. After that, I became more confident and open-minded and started to think that even if everyone are so different and have different traditions, different points of view, if we have a goal, if we will set a goal and have a big motivation, we always have a chance to want something great and or do something great. Like, I won this program after the second time, and you just need to keep trying and do your best.
Thank you, Daria. Sorry, guys, Abby is out again, so probably she has really poor connection with her internet. So if you don't mind, we'll wait a little bit again. Sorry.